Silence is not just an absence of words. It is a force. It carries weight, it shifts energy, and it demands attention without making a sound. When you ignore someone, you are not just removing your physical presence, you are withdrawing your emotional, mental, and psychological engagement. And that withdrawal is powerful. People underestimate the impact of their absence until it is felt. When you pull back, when you stop responding, when you let go of the need to explain, justify, or seek closure, something remarkable happens. The other person starts to feel it deeply. The reason silence is so powerful is that it forces the other person to sit with themselves. Most people are not comfortable with that. They thrive on validation, attention, and the constant reassurance that they are important. When you take that away, it creates a gap, a void, an emptiness that they are not prepared for. It makes them question everything. They wonder why you suddenly stop giving them access to your time, energy, and emotions. And in that wondering, they begin to feel a shift within themselves. Silence is a psychological tool, whether you realize it or not. The moment you stop reacting, you send a strong message without even needing to speak. Your absence speaks louder than any confrontation, any argument, or any explanation ever could. People expect you to react. They expect a response, whether it's anger, sadness, or frustration. But when you give them nothing, it unsettles them. It forces them to confront their own actions, their own behavior, and their own role in whatever dynamic was at play. There is a natural human tendency to take for granted what is always available. Think about it. When something is within easy reach, people stop valuing it. But the moment it becomes scarce, it suddenly becomes desirable. This is true for relationships, friendships, business, and life in general. When you are always there, always responding, always explaining, you are training the other person to believe that they can have access to you whenever they please. But the moment you stop, they are forced to reconsider. They are forced to recognize that access to you is not guaranteed. This is why ignoring someone is not an act of weakness, it is an act of strength. It requires discipline to hold back, to resist the urge to explain yourself, to clarify your position, or to prove a point. Most people operate from a place of emotional reactivity. They feel wronged, and they want to correct the narrative. They want to be understood. But the truth is, the need to be understood is often what keeps people stuck in cycles of seeking validation from those who do not deserve their energy. When you reach a place where you no longer feel the need to explain yourself, you gain an unmatched level of power. Silence creates curiosity. It makes people wonder. It makes them uncomfortable. When you ignore someone, you disrupt their sense of control. They may not have valued your presence when you were constantly available, but the moment you go silent, they are forced to acknowledge what they lost. This is because human nature is wired to chase what is slipping away. It's the same reason why people often don't realize what they have until it's gone. But here's the most important part. Ignoring is not about playing games or manipulating someone into valuing you. It is about taking control of your own energy. It is about recognizing that not everything deserves a response. Not everyone deserves access to you, and not every battle is worth fighting. When you ignore someone, you are choosing peace over conflict. You are choosing self-respect over desperation. You are making it clear that you refuse to engage in situations that drain you. The more you ignore, the more they feel it. And not because you are trying to hurt them, but because they suddenly realize that they are no longer in control of the narrative. They start to reflect on their actions. They begin to question their choices. And in that questioning, they feel the weight of your absence. They feel the power of the silence you have chosen. Your silence is a statement. It is a declaration that you are no longer willing to be part of something that does not serve you. And in that moment, the balance of power shifts. Emotional detachment is one of the most powerful tools you can develop. It allows you to take control of your emotions rather than letting them control you. Most people go through life reacting to everything, allowing their feelings to dictate their decisions, their moods, and even their sense of self-worth. But when you learn to detach emotionally, you stop being a puppet to external circumstances. You stop allowing people to manipulate your emotions, and you gain the ability to move through life with clarity, confidence, and peace. People often misunderstand emotional detachment. They think it means shutting down completely, becoming cold, or refusing to care. But true detachment is not about eliminating emotions. It is about mastering them. It is about knowing when to invest your energy and when to pull back. It is about protecting your inner peace rather than allowing yourself to be pulled into unnecessary emotional turmoil. The moment you detach, you become unshakable. You no longer react out of impulse. And that is where real power begins. One of the biggest mistakes people make is tying their emotions to external validation. They let their self-worth be dictated by how someone else treats them, how much attention they receive, or whether someone acknowledges their presence. This attachment creates unnecessary suffering because it places your happiness and sense of self in someone else's hands. But when you learn to detach, you take that power back. You realize that your emotions are yours to control, not something that should be at the mercy of another person's actions or words. Detachment is not about indifference. It is about selective engagement. It is about choosing where to invest your energy and refusing to waste it on people or situations that do not serve your growth. When you detach from someone emotionally, it does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing them to validate your worth. You stop looking for closure, explanations, or justification. You stop letting their behavior dictate how you feel about yourself. And when that happens, they begin to feel it. People are used to having power over others through emotional triggers. They know how to push buttons, how to make you react, how to keep you emotionally invested even when it is draining you. But when you detach, they lose that power. They start to notice that their words no longer affect you, that their presence no longer dictates your mood, and that their actions no longer have the same hold over you. And that is when they start to feel the shift. The moment you detach emotionally, you break the invisible chains that have been holding you captive. You no longer need an apology to move on. You no longer need validation to feel worthy. You no longer seek revenge, closure, or an explanation. You simply let go. And letting go does not mean losing, it means winning. It means freeing yourself from the emotional burdens that once weighed you down. It means walking away with your dignity intact, knowing that your peace is more valuable than any temporary satisfaction of reacting. People feel emotional detachment in a way that is undeniable. When you stop giving them the reactions they are used to, they start to question their own influence over you. They start wondering why you are no longer affected, why you no longer engage in the same emotional battles, why you no longer feel the need to prove yourself. And in that wondering, they begin to realize that they have lost the emotional control they once had. When you're emotionally attached, you give people the power to dictate your inner state. You let their words hurt you, their absence break you, their actions determine how you feel. But the moment you detach, you take that power back. You create a sense of inner stability that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. You become the master of your own emotions, and that mastery gives you the upper hand. People crave emotional responses. They feed off reactions, whether positive or negative. They thrive on knowing they can affect your mood, that they can make you feel something. But when you detach, you remove that satisfaction. You show them that their presence or absence has no power over your peace. And that is when they start to feel the emptiness left behind by your emotional withdrawal. Detachment is a skill that requires practice, but once you develop it, you become untouchable. You stop being easily provoked, easily manipulated, easily drawn into unnecessary conflicts. You gain a level of emotional freedom that most people never experience because they are too busy reacting, too consumed by the need for validation, too attached to things that do not deserve their energy. The more you detach, the more others feel it. They sense the change, the shift in power. They recognize that they no longer have the ability to influence your emotions, and that realization unsettles them. It forces them to confront their own behavior, their own patterns, their own role in the situation. And while they are busy trying to figure out why you are no longer reacting, you are already at peace, moving forward, unaffected, and in full control of your own emotions. People always want what they can have. It's a fundamental principle of human psychology. The moment something becomes scarce, it suddenly increases in value. This is true in business, relationships, and life in general. When something is always available, people take it for granted. They assume it will always be there. And because of that, they don't feel the need to fight for it, appreciate it, or even recognize its worth. But the moment that availability is taken away, everything changes. This is why the act of pulling away has such a profound effect. When you stop giving someone the attention, energy, and emotional investment they have grown accustomed to, they begin to notice its absence. At first, they may not react. They may assume it's temporary. They may even believe you are playing a game, trying to manipulate them into noticing you more. But the longer you remain distant, the more they begin to feel it. They start to question why the energy has shifted, why they no longer have the access they once did, and why their presence no longer seems to affect you the way it used to. People crave the thrill of the chase. When something is freely given, it lacks excitement. There's no challenge, no urgency, no reason to fight for it. But when something becomes elusive, when it starts to slip away, the mind begins to place a higher value on it. This is why limited edition products sell out instantly, why people will wait in line for hours to buy something that is only available in small quantities, and why in relationships, the person who is less available often holds more power. When you pull back, the dynamic changes. It forces the other person to reconsider their position. They begin to wonder what they missed, what they overlooked, and why things are no longer the same. They might not have noticed you when you were giving freely, but they will absolutely notice when you stop. This is because the human mind fixates on loss. We are wired to pay more attention to what is slipping away than to what is slipping away than to what is already in our grasp. This is why desperation never works. The more you chase someone, the more they pull away. The more you try to prove your worth, the more they take it for granted. But the moment you remove yourself from the equation, the entire situation shifts. Suddenly, you are no longer the one seeking validation, attention, or recognition. You become the one who must be noticed, who must be figured out, who must be pursued. There's a reason why people reminisce about lost opportunities, about the ones who got away, about the moments they failed to appreciate when they had them. It is because the mind clings to what it can no longer have. When you make yourself too accessible, people assume they can always come back whenever they please. But when you remove yourself, when you no longer make yourself available on their terms, they are forced to reevaluate everything. This is where emotional discipline comes into play. Most people struggle to step back because they fear being forgotten. They worry that if they don't constantly remind someone of their presence, they will no longer be valued. But the truth is, real value is recognized in absence, not in constant availability. People respect what they must work for. They admire what is not easily attained. They chase what they cannot immediately have. The pull of scarcity is undeniable. The more you withdraw, the more people are drawn toward you, not because you are playing a game, but because you are demonstrating self-worth. You are showing that you do not need to constantly prove yourself, that your presence is not something to be taken lightly, and that your energy is a privilege, not an obligation. When you understand this, everything changes. You no longer seek validation from others because you know that true value is recognized, not begged for. You no longer overextend yourself to be noticed because you realize that those who truly see your worth will make the effort. And most importantly, you stop fearing what happens when you step back because you understand that distance creates desire. This is why people chase what they cannot have. It is not about manipulation, it is about human nature. The harder something is to obtain, the more valuable it becomes in the eyes of the one who desires it. When you apply this principle to your interactions, you shift the power dynamic entirely. You go from being the one seeking attention to the one who commands it without even trying. And once you reach that level of understanding, you never again settle for being taken for granted. Silence has a power that most people underestimate. In a world where everyone is constantly talking, reacting, and trying to prove their worth, the person who remains quiet stands out the most. Silence makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to sit with their thoughts, to question things they might not have questioned before, and to pay attention in a way they otherwise wouldn't. When you stop responding, when you stop explaining, when you stop justifying your actions, you create a void, and people feel that void deeply. Most people are addicted to validation. They want to be acknowledged, heard, and reassured. They want to know they still hold significance in your life, that they still have an impact on your emotions, that their presence or absence still affects you. But when you choose silence, you disrupt that expectation. You remove their ability to feed off your energy. You take away the power they once had over your emotions. And in doing so, you force them to confront something they never expected, their own insignificance in your world. Silence is not just the absence of words. It is the presence of control. It is the ability to hold your ground without needing to explain yourself. It is knowing that not every situation requires your reaction, not every battle is worth fighting, and not every person deserves access to your emotions. When you remain silent, you project strength. You show that you are unaffected, that you are not desperate for attention, that you do not need to prove anything to anyone. And that, more than anything else, is what makes people notice you more. People expect reactions, they expect explanations, they expect arguments, emotions, and responses that confirm their importance. The moment you refuse to give them that satisfaction, they begin to feel the weight of their own irrelevance. They start wondering why you are not responding, why you are not reaching out, why you are not defending yourself. And in that wondering, they become consumed by thoughts of you. They start to analyze their actions, replay past conversations, and question whether they made a mistake. They begin to feel the discomfort of your absence, and that discomfort makes them realize just how much space you once occupied in their mind. Silence creates a psychological shift. It turns the tables. It makes the other person chase clarity, chase closure, chase the validation that they no longer receive from you. This is why silence is one of the most powerful responses you can give to someone who has taken you for granted. It forces them to experience firsthand the emptiness they created. It makes them sit with the consequences of their actions without you having to lift a finger. Most people do not understand how to use silence effectively. They feel the need to fill every gap, to respond immediately, to make their presence known at all times. But true power lies in restraint. It lies in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. It lies in understanding that sometimes the most impactful statement you can make is to say nothing at all. Because silence forces reflection. It forces accountability. It forces people to feel what they have lost. When you stop reacting, people notice. They may not admit it right away, but they feel it. They recognize the shift, even if they pretend not to. They start to realize that they no longer have the same influence over you, that their words no longer provoke the same emotions, that their presence no longer carries the same weight. And that realization is unsettling. It makes them question everything. Silence is a mirror. It reflects back to people the consequences of their own behavior. It shows them exactly what life looks like without your energy, your attention, your investment. And more often than not, that reflection is something they struggle to accept. It forces them to acknowledge their own actions, their own mistakes, their own role in the situation. It makes them face the reality they once ignored. When you choose silence, you reclaim your power. You take back the energy that was once freely given. You create a boundary that cannot be crossed unless you allow it. You set the standard that says, I do not need to prove my worth to anyone. And that kind of confidence is rare. It is magnetic. It draws people in more than words ever could. People crave certainty. They want to know where they stand. They want reassurance. Even in conflict, when you remain silent, you deny them that certainty. You leave them questioning. You make them sit with their own thoughts, their own emotions, their own regrets. And in doing so, you shift the power dynamic entirely. You become the one in control, the one who dictates the pace, the one who decides when and if you will ever engage again. Most people will never understand the power of silence because they are too afraid to use it. They are afraid of being forgotten, of being misunderstood, or being left behind. But the truth is, those who truly matter will never forget you. They will never need constant reminders of your worth. And those who do forget, they were never meant to have access to you in the first place. Silence is not weakness. It is the ultimate form of self-respect. It is the decision to remove yourself from situations that do not serve you, to protect your peace at all costs, to let your absence speak louder than any words ever could. And the more you embrace silence, the more others will feel its impact. They will feel it in the empty spaces where your presence used to be. They will feel it in the conversations that no longer happen. They will feel it in the unanswered messages, the unreturned calls, the void that only you once filled. Silence is not about punishing others. It is about elevating yourself. It is about recognizing that your energy is valuable, that your presence is a gift, that your emotions are not something to be taken for granted. It is about teaching people without saying a word that if they want to be part of your life, they must value you in the way you deserve. And that lesson, once learned, is never forgotten. Emotions are powerful, but they can also be deceiving. When someone distances themselves, when they no longer give you the attention and validation you once received, it triggers a deep emotional response. The mind begins to spiral, looking for answers, questioning your worth, replaying memories, and searching for ways to regain what was lost. This is where the real challenge begins, not in how the other person feels, but in how you handle your own emotions. Most people react impulsively to emotional discomfort. They feel an urge to reach out, to fix things, to get closure, to say something that will make the other person see their worth. This reaction is driven by fear. The fear of being forgotten, the fear of never being enough. But reacting based on fear only creates more pain. It puts you in a position where your self-worth is dependent on someone else's recognition of it. It makes you chase even when you should be walking away. It blinds you to the truth that real value is never begged for. It is acknowledged effortlessly. This is why mastering emotional control is so crucial. When someone ignores you, when they withhold their attention, when they make you feel like an afterthought, the natural response is to seek validation from them. But seeking validation from someone who has already shown you that they do not value you is self-destruction. It is handing them the power to dictate your self-worth. It is allowing their actions to determine how you feel about yourself. And the moment you give someone that power, the real test is in your ability to sit with those uncomfortable emotions without acting on them. It is in recognizing that just because someone does not see your worth does not mean your worth is any less. It is in understanding that their silence is not a reflection of you. It is a reflection of them. People who care, people who value you, people who truly want to be in your life will not put you in a position where you have to question your importance. They will not create uncertainty, they will not play games, and they will not make you feel like you have to prove yourself. When someone pulls away, when they no longer make the effort, when they stop giving you the attention they once did, the best thing you can do is nothing at all. Let them feel the silence. Let them experience your absence. Let them wonder why you are no longer reacting, because in that space, in that silence, they are left with only their own thoughts. And their thoughts will always be louder than anything you could ever say. The more you control your emotions, the more powerful you become. People who cannot control their emotions are easily manipulated. They react to every little thing. They chase after people who do not deserve them. They allow their feelings to dictate their actions. But when you develop emotional discipline, you become untouchable. You no longer respond to every provocation. You no longer seek approval. And you no longer allow temporary emotions to lead you into permanent mistakes. Emotional control does not mean suppressing your feelings. It means mastering them. It means acknowledging what you feel without letting those feelings control you. It means understanding that emotions are temporary, that they will pass, that they do not define who you are. And most importantly, it means recognizing that you are the only one who gets to decide your worth. Not someone else's attention, not someone else's validation, not someone else's. When you refuse to react emotionally, you take away their power. You break the cycle of seeking, of chasing, of proving. You show that you are not dependent on anyone else to feel whole. And that level of self-control is rare. It is what separates those who are truly confident from those who only pretend to be. Because confidence is not loud. It does not beg. It does not chase. It does not need to be proven. Confidence is silent, secure, and unshaken by external circumstances. This is why the most powerful response to being ignored is to do nothing at all. Not because you do not care, but because you understand that your energy is too valuable to waste on someone who does not appreciate it. It is not about playing games or trying to make them miss you. It is about respecting yourself enough to walk away from situations that do not align with your worth. It is about knowing that real love, real respect, real connection never leaves you questioning where you stand. Most people will never reach this level of emotional control because they are too caught up in their feelings. They allow rejection to define them. They allow someone else's lack of interest to make them feel unworthy. But the truth is, being ignored is not a sign that you are not valuable. It is a sign that the other person is incapable of seeing your worth. And that is their loss, not yours. You cannot force someone to appreciate you. You cannot convince someone to see your value. You cannot make someone care. But what you can do is control your response. You can choose to walk away with your dignity intact. You can choose to focus on yourself instead of trying to change their perception. You can choose to rise above the need for external validation and recognize that the only validation you ever needed was your own. The moment you take back control of your emotions, everything changes. You stop reacting to things that do not deserve your energy. You stop chasing people who are not meant for you. You stop looking for answers in places where you will never find them. And in that process, you become the one who is truly in control. Because the strongest person in any situation is always the one who remains composed, who refuses to let emotions dictate their actions, and who understands that self-worth is not determined by someone else's recognition of it, but by their own unwavering belief in it. Growth is never found in the comfort of seeking approval. It is not in the endless cycle of proving your worth to someone who refuses to see it. True growth happens in silence, in solitude, in the moments when you decide that your energy is too valuable to be wasted on chasing, explaining, or justifying. Growth begins when you detach, not just from people who ignore you, but from the need for external validation altogether. When you are ignored, your ego screams for attention. It wants a response, a reaction, a sign that you still matter. It wants to be reassured that your presence is missed, that you still hold a place in their mind. But the truth is, real confidence does not seek reassurance. It does not beg for recognition. It does not crumble in the face of indifference. Real confidence thrives in self-awarenesses, in the understanding that your value is not dependent on someone else's acknowledgement of it. The more you focus on yourself, the less you need from others. The more you invest in your growth, the less their absence affects you. And this is where the real shift happens. Because when you stop needing people to validate you, they start noticing you more. When you stop chasing, they start wondering. When you become consumed with your own self-improvement, your own success, your own peace, they start to feel the emptiness of your absence. Most people never realize that the strongest statement they can make is to move on without looking back. There is nothing more unsettling than someone who no longer cares, someone who no longer reacts, someone who is so focused on their own journey that they do not even notice who is watching. And that is exactly what happens when you shift your energy inward. You stop waiting. You stop expecting. You stop hoping for someone to give you what you should have been giving yourself all along, unshakable self-worth. People return to those who evolve. They are drawn to those who change, who improve, who elevate their lives in ways that cannot be ignored. But the irony is, by the time they notice, you will have already outgrown them. You will have already moved on to bigger things. You will have already become so secure in yourself that their presence or absence no longer makes a difference. And that is the real power, not in making them miss you, but in becoming the person who no longer cares whether they do or not. Focusing on yourself does not mean ignoring your emotions. It does not mean suppressing the pain or pretending you are unaffected. It means using that energy to build yourself into someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who does not break at the first sign of rejection. It means turning every ounce of frustration into motivation, every unanswered question into self-discovery, every moment of silence into an opportunity for growth. When you pour into yourself instead of chasing someone who has pulled away, everything in your life begins to shift. You start to see the bigger picture. You realize that you were never supposed to rely on someone else for validation. You were never meant to shrink yourself just to be noticed. You were never supposed to beg for attention when you were born to command respect. The more you elevate yourself, the more you naturally attract people who see your worth. You stop entertaining half-hearted efforts. You stop accepting breadcrumbs of affection. You stop waiting for someone to come back when you are too busy moving forward. Because when you truly focus on yourself, you start to understand what you deserve. And once you understand that, you will never again settle for less. Most people waste their time analyzing why someone ignored them, why they lost interest, why they changed. But the real question is, why does it matter? Why give so much power to someone who does not even see your value? Why let their lack of attention define your worth? The truth is, their actions say nothing about you and everything about them. Someone who truly values you will never put you in a position where you feel invisible. They will never make you question your importance. They will never treat you as if you are an option when you were meant to be a priority. This is why the best response is no response. Not because you are playing a game, but because you are choosing yourself over someone who would not do the same. You are choosing peace over chaos. You are choosing self-respect over desperation. You are choosing growth over stagnation. And that kind of decision is what separates those who remain stuck from those who rise. Growth does not happen in longing for what was. It does not happen in chasing people who refuse to stay. It happens in moving forward, in building yourself into someone who does not need to be validated by anyone but themselves. It happens when you stop asking why they ignored you and start asking how you can become the best version of yourself despite it. People who ignore you today will regret it tomorrow, not because you forced them to, but because you became so great that they could not help but notice. And by then, their recognition will not matter, because you will have already found everything you were looking for, not in their attention, but in yourself.